this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's a kitchen time, but not like any other. I just got these in. They're out in the front garden. Early daffodils, beautiful colour and slight fragrance. They need some sunshine on them. The reason I've cut these, because they look really nice in the garden at the moment, but we're about to get a storm. And most years this happens. Just as the early daffodils come out, we get a storm that just beats them down to the ground and ruins them. So I thought, we'll have some indoors. So those are for in here. The rest of this is a bit different, shall we say. Right, that's a tray. It used to hold water, but some time ago, those of you who have been around a while, we made some holes at a certain height so that it would still hold a bit of water but not fill up, so that it would drain but leave like a puddle in the bottom. So I'm reusing that. This was done for a reason. Those of you who have been with the channel a long time, you know why. So you know what's coming. Now what I've got in here is a bag of composty stuff from way back when that I've just found. I don't know what I mixed this up for. I haven't got a clue. All I know is that it's dust dry and hello pussycat, and it's been around for quite a while, so I wouldn't use it for orchids, but that's going in. I want to see how much I've got, how deep it is, in other words. That's not bad, that's a sort of layer. Now that's an assortment of bark, some old broken up sphagnum and some perlite type stuff, or what looks like perlite, I presume it is. Yeah. So that was mixed up for a reason, a long time ago, and I had some left over and I put it in that white plastic bag for later, and then just buried it and forgot all about it. Right, I'm going to get some more moss and put a layer over the top. Doesn't have to be tidy, I just want a layer over the top of real moss rather than a mixture with bark. I'm going to have to get some more of this. We've got a show coming up at the end of the month, and my man should be there with stocks, so I can replenish the stocks. Don't think I'm going to need a lot of moss this year, but I wouldn't like to be without it, because I could change my mind. Right, so now all of that is bone dry, so I'm going to pour some water over that just to start a wetting process. Sorry this is off camera, but this was a spur of the moment thing really. Now, because this is going to drain out of the holes, it's not going to thoroughly wet it, but it will start the wetting process, and I can add some more later because it will wick. So it will start getting wet. It doesn't matter that much if it's not fully wet. Now obviously I've got to let this drain out before I bring it back. Oh come on. Just watching it coming out of the holes, thinking to myself I could wee faster than that. Excuse me. Well, it could try a bit harder and come out a bit quicker, couldn't it? Right, how's that? Is that going to dribble everywhere? No, that's fine. Right, so that's enough water's been drained out that it's not going to carry on dribbling everywhere. Dry hands. Right, now I suppose you need to know what it's for. Well, what it's for is what's in here. We've been out. We've been out to get some moss, and in here should be several different types of moss. The idea is I'm going to start a little moss gut. Now this moss, you got to have a close up of that. Look how pretty that is. Don't ask me what sort of moss all this is, I haven't got a clue. It's in a little area that I know where it's a forested area and there's a dip. For no apparent reason, there's just a hollow which stays very wet, and consequently it's very mossy. And in that area, a long time ago, a lot of trees fell down, and consequently there's lots of wood on the ground for moss to grow on. Yet another different sort here. Right. That's just bits, and so far I haven't seen any creepy crawlies. That doesn't mean to say we haven't got any. So types, we've got two of these types might be the same, but these bits here with the wood on were taken off a piece of tree that was on the ground. So that's one type. Yeah, it's the bit, so it's still got the wood attached and the little roots underneath. So that's one type. And then we've got our fluffy stuff. Some of it mixed up with the other stuff. They were all growing together. And then this stuff was just growing high on the ground, like on top of the leaf litter and the pine needles. So it was quite high off the ground. So we've got probably only two different types here, but it could be three. What do you think? Do they look the same? Yeah, they do. So two different types, probably. And the idea is I'm going to start a new moss garden and get it growing, and then I will have a supply of live moss for the tops of pots and to add some mounts. That's my theory. Now I'm going to give it a bit of a clean up as I do this and get as many of the pine needles off as I can, and just have a quick check over, make sure I can't see any visible things moving. Yeah, there could be things moving in amongst this, but the beauty of collecting moss this time of year is there isn't much about. There isn't much alive that's moving around. A lot of the insect world and slugs, snails, things like that, they're dormant this time of year. It's too flipping cold. I mean, we've had hard frost the last couple of days. Oh, that's quite good. Right, that's one bit. There are still some dead leaves in amongst it, but that's part of what it grows on. So that's one piece. It came off in nice sized pieces, I must admit. It's an acorn, decomposing acorn, but acorn nonetheless. Actually, those might be the bits out of fir cones on reflection. Right, let's do a fluffy bit. Whatever sort of moss this is, it's very attractive. Probably promptly die on me. And this has got a much thicker base to it. It sounded like cats fighting. I'm just trying to think, did my cat come in or go out? Can't remember. He'll learn to look after himself, won't he? Right, nearly done. As I say, I'm not trying to get this immaculate. I want it to be relatively natural. I'm just trying to get the worst of the pine needles and things out. Otherwise they'll end up in pots and on mounts. I think I'm going to have a bit too much for this tray as well. I don't think I've got another one, or another suitable one. Let's be a bit adventurous here and just get the good bits. Now the tray that this is going in lived outside and had my first moss garden in it, which was promptly decimated by the birds. So as this moss is destined to be in the grow room long term, that's where it's going to go. So it's going to have to acclimatise very quickly from being outside and going down to freezing overnight to being in a warmer place, but having a constant supply of water, which is me. I can do that bit. So another bit of this fluffy stuff, so I do like this. Whether this is going to grow or not, no way of telling. Time will do that for us, as it usually does. Time will tell. The trouble is, I don't want to waste this. But I'm not going to get much more in, that's for sure. Not on this tray. I know what I could do. I've got some trays of sphagnum moss in the grow room already. I could squash that up and make room for the rest of this. It won't be much, but it'll be worth keeping. Right, there we go. So one moss garden, two different types. I'm going to pour another load of water over that and let it drain. That'll just help wash the bottom of the moss into what's below it, except we've run out of water and we'll fill that up again. Right, let's put that to one side a minute. Preferably somewhere flat so it doesn't all drain all over the place. And we'll get some more water to pour over the top. I just want to sort of settle it in. Pouring water over it will push it down and try and get it into where it needs to go. Yeah, I've got enough here that I don't want to waste. I'll just stop the camera a minute, I'll be back. Right, this is one of the trays of sphagnum which we got going last year. Which, as it happens, doesn't actually work that well. Certainly on mounts it doesn't, because it needs to stay constantly wet to live. When you're using the dead moss, that's not a requirement, because it doesn't matter if it dries out, it's dead. But when you're trying to use live moss, the idea is to keep the live moss alive, so it has to stay wet. And sphagnum on a mount is going to have periods when it dries out. It just is. I'm just placing this on top of the sphagnum moss. They'll grow in together, or they won't, one or the other. But it just saves wasting it. It gives me another source of moss that may or may not grow. Just tucking little bits in places, just on top of the sphagnum, so it can grow in together, or not. I think that'll do. These are just little bits now. Bit in here and there, see if it will grow into a new clump. Yeah, I think that'll do. Right, so what's this one doing? Dribbled all over the place. Yep, so here we go. New moss garden. Some moss added to the sphagnum moss that may or may not join in together. That's an unknown, never tried it before. I don't see why it shouldn't all grow in together. It's all moss. And obviously this tray with the sphagnum in hasn't got holes in. This one can be filled right up to the top, and it will hold water right up to the top. And once we get to the warmer weather, this will have a lot more water in it. And the sphagnum will be virtually floating on the top. And then this one has got enough water in the base to wick up into the moss without the moss being sitting in the water, because that's not how this type of moss grows. This grows on top of damp areas, not buried in it or floating on it, as the case may be. Right, we'll see what happens. There is something about the greenness of moss. It's a special green. It's really nice. And that fluffy stuff is, do you know, I don't think I've ever seen that before. I hope that's not really rare and I've decimated the only place it lives in the UK. Highly unlikely in the area I was in. It's an area that gets used by a lot of people, dog walkers and the like. So it's a popular area for walking, but unfortunately, well, fortunately for me, the people who go walking in places like that with their dogs never venture off the pathway. So they miss so much. All they ever see is the little bit that everybody sees. They never think to just venture off the path, make their own path up through the undergrowth and find little clearings and things. You know, that's where the unusual's more likely to be. So, right, we will get that back in the grow room and see what happens. That was a nice little trip out. That took me about half an hour to collect that moss because I knew exactly where I was going. Oh, you have to add on the car time, obviously. I had to get there. But yeah, it took me about half an hour. 10 minutes to walk there, 10 minutes looking around at what was available, and 10 minutes collecting it and then coming back home. So yeah, nice little trip out. My first trip out this year into the wild unknown. While I was there, I went out onto the boggy heath that's nearby. I have filmed before actually, when I went to get some actual wild sphagnum. And basically there's an area where you can creep. You just walk low basically, and you've got a mound in amongst the boggy area that's dry enough to walk on without going up to your waist basically. And there's a couple of ways to get to it if you know what you're doing without sinking up to your waist, like I said. So yeah, I crept out low there to just sort of look up over the top onto the ponds, and there were some ducks out there, including one sort of duck that I didn't recognise. That doesn't mean it's rare or anything, it's just, I'm not very good with those sort of birds. I'm more into the woodland birds and stuff like that. Anyway, a little trip out and some more greenery. The sphagnum moss tray will go back where it came from, and the new tray is just going to go on a shady shelf where it doesn't get any sun and low down. And of course this helps with the humidity in the grow room as well, you know, so evaporating water off it all the time. It'll be interesting to see if this grows and gets going. All good fun. See you next time.